Welcome, audience, to another edition of CEO Insights. Today, I have Carl Cox of 40 Strategy and the CEO of Acumen Executive Search, Suzanne Hennepin. Carl, would you kindly introduce yourself to the audience and tell us what's going on in your world right now?
Sure, Karen. Thank you so much for the introduction. And once again, my name is Carl Cox, and I'm the CEO of 40 Strategy. What 40 Strategy is at its core is why we're called that is about 2% of organizations' time is spent on strategy. So if you multiply that out of basically 2,000 work hour a year, that's about 40 hours. So the concept is basically to help our team and anybody who's working with us to help out, guide, and provide strategic expertise to those 40 hours so organization can actually navigate their strategy and fulfill their purpose.
Fantastic. And I understand that you partnered with a myriad of different businesses. Can you give us an example of how you walk with a business through this process?
You bet. So we have an 8-stage process that we do to help be able to analyze and understand what's happening within an organization. But one of the things we like to do first often is to get to know them like anybody else would. But we do that specifically. We have a navigation strategy assessment. And so we take a look at the 8 basic stages and see where they compare to our baseline group of people who have responded to that. And so we could see where their gaps are. And what's common, what's really interesting with doing this on a regular basis is we start to see these trends of where organizations are okay with what they're doing, and then we see where organizations tend to struggle. And from that we can have, since it's a self-assessment, it's not myself telling them this is what they're doing. It helps provide a much better conversation. We operate in very much a facilitation type way. So we work with organizations of all different types. Frankly, every single person in the room knows more about their business than I ever will.
Carl, we've talked about your 8-step program. Can you share with us what the 8 steps are?
You bet. So what we do is once again, our organization is navigating your strategy with purpose. And so we put it into a kind of a C-type worthiness of trying to find your treasure at the end of the day. If you could think about that from kind of navigating and getting your map. So the first element is figuring out what your compass is. That's stage 1. And that's basically understanding who you are, what your purpose is, and starting from that's step 1. Step 2 is actually looking at where you want to go. So where is your treasure, if you may? Where is your goal? Where are you trying to achieve? And we look at the short and then the long term. The third step is we figure out how you're going to get there. And those are the strategies, right? Usually there's multiple strategies to getting. So let's do this vision of we're going to ship from Portland, to Shanghai. Okay, we're gonna take a boat over to there. So from that, we're gonna find these different things we're gonna evaluate on how we're actually gonna ship there. The 5th thing though is weighing your cargo, and that's, if you mentioned, we talked about earlier the Thanksgiving effect. We could only put so many things into that boat and move forward before we move forward, right? And so that's making sure we have the right amount of resources and the right amount of focus. The next thing that we do is after we've weighed the cargoes, we actually have to get off the dock. And as I mentioned earlier, only 20% of strategic plans and initiatives actually start on time. And so we believe in getting that ship out on time. And then we track that in a method. The next phase is we measure. And so we start using KPIs and we track that leading and lagging. And one of the biggest things we like to focus on is our leading indicators, because the leading indicators is what impacts the outcomes. Then we reach our port. That's where we actually have success. And then finally, after reaching our port, we look for where we're going next, right? So you get to a certain port, and let's say you get to Shanghai, where are you going next? And so many organizations, I think, miss their greatest opportunity because it might be at the very next port. And so we keep on having to make sure we look ahead and to realize what our full potential is.
Well, I'm going to ask a question on this. You mentioned earlier that, where do you want to go? Do you help clients also with their kind of succession strategy?
Wow. Yeah. So do we help them with it? Yes. So I work with organizations literally from startup and work with some investors on clients that they have on transition, work with other clients of their original founders. I work with other people who are second generation. How do I say this? People in the CEO role are always looking for what's next from that big picture. And there's always that element of succession strategy. And so, yes, so I work with organizations in all those different areas. I wouldn't say per se that I'm an expert at exit strategy, right? So I would actually bring somebody in for the details on what did they need to do to help that take place. But strategy at its core is about how you get from A to B. It's change management. And so I help people understand ultimately how to get there. Yep, go ahead, Suzanne, you're raising
Yeah, no, I just wanted to get a better understanding of sizes of your companies and more importantly, pre-COVID versus post-COVID. I mean, we're in COVID right now.
Yeah.
Has the strategies been changing today?
Oh, wow. Okay, so let me flip through real quick and pop back. So first size-wise, technically it could be any size. I work from startups up to billion-dollar organizations, but my preference, my kind of joy is that 4 million to 40 million size. And I'm kind of using that because it's an easy thing to remember with the name 40 strategy. But why 4 million is typically they start having multiple people within their executive team. So I like it when there's just enough problems that they need help. And I like being able to help out that leadership team or beginning leadership team. Up to 40 million is when they're continue to expand and devise their group. So it's more interesting, if you may. Once it gets above 100 million, I don't mind working with them, but I tend to get a little bit bored with the bureaucracy. And when things take too long to move through, that's when I'm like, okay, life is short, and I don't want to wait for 65 committee meetings to get through to get things done. And so, and usually they're able to hire the expertise at that point in time, to be able to do the things that I'm doing. So anyways, hopefully that helps out with that specific question. And different types of organizations that I've been with have been from not-for-profits to, and throughout the US as well. So I have clients based here in Portland, Oregon, Seattle, LA, Chicago, DC, Boston. The wonderful part actually it's been a pro and con. When COVID hit, I didn't have a client in the Portland area. And so what happened to me was brutal. I could not go see my clients because everything shut down, right? And so fortunately, I have a lot of experience with Zoom. And so I was able to maneuver them back to Zoom as much as possible. And so I was able to do that. But ultimately, some of my clients got hit pretty hard as well. And so some of those clients that were in this challenge and process, I mean, one of them was like no longer around, right? And that had nothing to do with it. Just, if you're a restaurant, for example, right, it's pretty tough to overcome those situations. Other clients, on the other hand, are doing just fine, or they're actually doing better because they do have a strategy with what's happening. And so it's been a lot of fun to help those organizations get some semblance of strategy. What I'm seeing in the COVID world is not too many 5-year strategic plans. What we've been talking about, people, is trying to get to that, literally start getting goals again set out. And even if it's a 90-day goal, set a 90-day goal, set short-term and start having some success. Because I think one of the biggest challenges is organizations are just struggling to find joy, right? I mean, you add all the noise that's going around us today. It's so significant. It's so negative. And we don't have to go through them all, right? They're just very clear. And 2020 will be remembered, right, from all the challenges that we're having. But the reality is each organization is trying to make a difference, and they're trying to make a difference in those lives. And so I try to create these short wins. And when we start creating short wins, we could start now going, okay, how are we going to finish 2020? And then after we go through 2020, I think we start seeing what 2021 should look like. And then what I try to do is start stretching them out. Okay, let's start looking 3 years ahead, because actions we're doing today are going to start impacting 3 years from now. So it's been this combination of short to long term, but until they have those short-term successes, they don't believe the long-term. And but the other problem is trying to help people understand is this: there may be a new normal, and we don't know exactly what it is, but waiting for the government to solve your problems is probably not the right solution.
Yes, absolutely right. Are there repetitive challenges that you're experiencing that you can share with our audience common mistakes, common misconceptions?
So one of my favorite and least favorite things is the strategic retreat. Okay, so I'm sure many in the audience here have been on these strategic retreats, and typically it gets an eye roll when I talk with people, especially other executives, not necessarily the CEO, but the other executives are like, oh no, now we have the strategic retreat. And what's fun is, what I enjoy about them is you're typically with a bunch of type A personalities. We can get it done, we can do everything. And there's something that happens during those meetings that I call the Thanksgiving effect. You go to a location, you have a nice dinner, maybe some wine, and then the next day you start digging in and looking at your opportunities for the next year, next 2 year, next 3 years, next 5 years. And there is this, oh, we could do anything and we could eat as much as you want, using the Thanksgiving analogy, right? Well, the problem is you can't do everything. Strategy is as much about saying what you can't do as much as what you should do. And if we kept on even having Thanksgiving meals every single day, we would blow up, right? We'd be way too much weight. Well, the same thing happens to organizations. They think we could do 500 goals and they could only do a few goals well. And so the challenge is bringing them back and start focusing on the things that makes them successful, and frankly, eliminating things that aren't. And that's what I try to train strategic retreats into.
So if I'm hearing you right, Carl, it sounds like it's more important to set these short-term attainable goals with the long-term in mind, but really to focus on that, especially during these trying times. Did I hear you correctly?
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. Focus on the short term, get short-term wins, but still heading in the direction where you're trying to go to, right? So you think of like I don't personally have any clients like this, but you think of the beer manufacturers, right, that have changed into hand sanitizing solution. Mm-hmm. Okay, that was a way to survive, but that's probably not a long-term strategy, right? And so how do we do the things to now go, okay, how do we convert over and start selling beer again, if you may, or if we're going to go into sanitizing, how do we get better at that? So that's the parts I think we have to think about is what are these things we're doing? Are they survival techniques or tactics? Or are they actually helping us to get where we want to be 3 years from now?
Absolutely. And we are talking about having a strategic plan, having you speak on this soon at a gathering. And I'm excited to hear what you're going to share with the audience. But right now, if you had some words of wisdom for a CEO, what would they be? Apart from short-term goals and with the future in mind, what would you counsel him?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. I think number one is being present and being positive. And keep people reminding them what their purpose is all about. So the first stage in our 8-stage process is clear. I call it clearing your compass, which is basically understanding your vision, your values, and who you are. And in times like these, it couldn't be more important to remember who you are. And when we do those different elements and we do those things, honestly, you're going to keep the people who you want to keep through these challenges, and those who are not the right fit, it's okay for them to find other places. And so I think it's in these trying times and under leadership, you have to stay poised, you have to stay positive. And if you need to complain, you go to your executive coach and complain to them, right? You go outside, but you cannot complain down. You can't come in upset about politics. You can't come in upset about COVID regulations. You have to be better than ever right now as a CEO and realize that every CEO leadership is facing that same problem.
Yeah, and so I have a question, Carl. This is external. You've mentioned a couple of things. One is that now you've got clients in Portland. I want to take a step back and find what you are doing. This has been really challenging for a lot of service providers. So how have you pivoted yourself?
So the one challenge I mentioned, quick pivot that I did, it was a pretty brief one. It was just being able to moving online to do virtual strategic consulting. And so my preference is to be in person whenever possible, because I just think there's an extra layer of nonverbal communication and feel, if you may, that you get from being in the presence of somebody in the same room. You get a feel of the culture, what's happening within that organization. So that's my preference, but I had to move to pivot to go to online. So that was a big thing. That was the first big thing that I did, was just making myself accessible through Zoom with those clients. One of the things that I changed was I called it facilitation, which is basically the concept of facilitating online in a virtual world. And so that pivot helped me to make sure and provide confidence to other clients that I can help them out even if I'm not there in person. So with my client that I have in the Boston area, I can't be there. I'm not planning to travel to Boston in the near term. And it's I couldn't actually afford it as much, for the time being away. So that's one thing I've done. The really great thing, Suzanne, that I didn't anticipate through all this is because I can handle a certain amount of clients online, I actually can now carry more clients than I used to. And so this has been I hate to say this, a little bit of a blessing in disguise for my business. I pretty much had this game plan to have 2 client billing days per month, meaning on site with clients, a travel day, a marketing day, and an admin day. That's how I had it built up, okay, from a client consulting perspective. Well, now I could do 3 to 4 days of actually billable client work, because I can do two to three of those online. I could do 2 of those not being on site. And then I have just 1 day of quote unquote admin, sales, administration perspective. So that's the biggest change that I made. And frankly, this change is going to help me grow beyond. The other thing that happened I didn't anticipate is I started bringing on, because I was talking with so many people when I was stuck at home, if you may, or stuck working on it, is I talked to so many different partners. So I have some alliances now of different individuals I'm working with, so they can help work on some of the things that I'm working on, that they have a better strength set than I do, or they prefer to dive more into the details that I typically would with my clients.
And that's a wonderful thing. We live and die by our relationships with our partners here at Acumen, because you can't be everything to everybody. You have to know what your expertise is, and then bring in somebody that's equally excellent in their field. This is a wonderful thing, because you're giving your clients what they need through the experts, but at the same time, you're establishing credibility, knowing when to stay in your lane. Carl and Suzanne, I've got a question for both of you. When should the experts be called in? I mean, ideally, you're probably going to say, bring in the experts at the beginning, but a lot of people don't. When are the warning signals? What are the warning signals to really pay attention to?
Yeah. Suzanne, you want to hit that first from your perspective?
Well, I think you said it the best, Karen, that immediately they need to call us. But in reality, I think there's a couple of things. One is, going back to what Carl said at the beginning, do they have a very clear compass? Do they know who they are, where they're going? And then really taking that step back of saying, I'm not sure at this point, what do I need? And I think that's where, experts like us can step in and really help guide them through any process of whether it's recruiting or organizational design or development, making sure that you have the right people in the right seats. I would imagine, Carl, it's very similar to you, that it's usually at a pain point that people reach out to you. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's at a pain point, or they're stuck, meaning they've got to a certain level, and they're for some reason they keep on bumping against that level, and they can't figure out why to break through. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is nearly every single time I facilitate, not every time, but nearly every time, they actually know the answer.
Yes.
But they're stuck in their day-to-day grinding to serve their clients and to pay their employees and to get things done. And frankly, just the openness and being able to listen and reflect back what is being said, and also being this third party, because often there's these sacred cows that is within an organization, and I come in and I have no idea what the sacred cow is, and I don't mind touching that sacred cow, or the sacred bear, so to speak. And then all of a sudden they'll go, oh yeah, you're right, that doesn't matter anymore, right? That was a big deal 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 3 years ago, but that person's not even around anymore, and we can get rid of that policy and start moving forward. So it just helps to reflect them at these past concepts and phrases. And I'm a big believer though in speed. but they have to buy into the speed. So let me talk about it for a minute. Each day you don't move forward with your strategy is a day you never, ever get back. Okay. You're paying people's wages every single day. And so let's say you had $10,000 in wages or whatever, $1,000 in wages you were paying daily. You never get that back. And so we're going to, Suzanne, immediately that was the right answer, by the way, because the cost of you not making the right decision is costing you money every single day. And so when I hear people saying, oh, it's okay, and forgive me here for saying, when we say it's not okay to meet with clients or it's not okay to support and do things, you can never recover those losses ever in your entire life. You know what I mean? And we're gonna say, oh, it's gonna all catch up in the past. Some of these things never will. And as a result, organizations are gonna go out of business, you know, as a result of these matters. And we know the margins are so thin in so many different organizations, right? And you lose a full days of wages or a month's of wages or 2 months of wages or 6 months of wages. People have only so much in savings. And the same thing applies for this. So anyways, I believe you have to move quickly, but you have to be aligned with moving on quickly. So you have to move slower before you can move fast. I'm speaking a little bit dichotomy of this. You have to tackle the problem as quick as you can, but you have to move slower to move faster, because there will be people within an organization, if they have not bought in, they will intentionally or unintentionally sabotage the strategy.
Yes, we've seen it.
Absolutely. So I have a fast question for you, Carl. You mentioned that, you know, today you can't get back, you know, the lost revenues of not managing your team, you know, driving to the ultimate goal, all of this. So what are you seeing as the new normal? I mean, people now are talking 2021, maybe summer, maybe a whole year, you know, we just don't know that outcome. So what's your perspective on it?
So once again, there are real challenges, right? And once again, let's in the short answer is this is where organizations do have to pivot to make a difference and provide value, right? So if under the assumption there are government restrictions that we can't do our normal day to day, right? If that's the truth, then the truth is we cannot wait to pivot now and to provide the new strategy now. That's why, once again, I immediately pivoted online, and now I could serve twice as many clients because I could do online. But at the same time, our organization and myself, I'm not worried about traveling. So I have been traveling throughout the US and supporting clients when they need it. And so I personally made that decision on myself, you know, to be able to do that. I know that's not where everyone, but I also will say this, those who are willing to make those things, they're going to have I had my first social business gathering meeting, not at a client, but a social business gathering meeting. And we will all remember that meeting that we had, you know, because it was like, wow, it was the first time we met socially with other business people in something different. When you as a supplier go and meet with the client for the first time, they're going to remember that first meeting. So anyways, I'm a big fan of, if you feel comfortable and feel safe, get out there, see people, make a difference in a safe environment. Of course, I'm saying this under safe, you know, doing whatever the protocols are. But don't wait. You're gonna lose clients, and you will not be around, you know, for the longer term if you keep on waiting.
And so I just wanted to bring up, Carl, because I love it. You talked about top line revenue of driving business, but you also talked about these efficiencies that you personally made too, which is the bottom line, you know. And so if you can increase your top line and improve your bottom line, I mean, that's magic accounting goal, right? So I just want to say congratulations to you. And I'm glad to hear that it's okay to go out, because we've started having interviews here, but we're doing it 6 feet apart, starting to have meetings here again. And I will say, and I agree, I remember those because it's special.
Yeah.
Karen, back to you.
Well, you know, again, know your company, know your mission, know your values, know what you can do, know what you can't do, and really get a grip on the opportunities and focus in on that. Don't go cheap when you when you shouldn't. In other words, we know the pain that's connected with hiring badly. A bad hire will cost you a fortune and cost you time. And you said it, Carl. Time is a precious commodity. So really, really hone in what you have. And I see Suzanne's raising her hand. Here you go.
No, I just wanted to ask Carl one last question, and I promise this is it. How can we help you and help drive that top line or help you on your bottom line?
So from our perspective is if there are people out there or organizations, businesses that are looking to develop their next strategic plan, or they want some coaching, to understand where perhaps their gaps are. I do, once again, I haven't even gone through the eight steps, but in a word, basically it's a very solid cycle, and it incorporates things from KPIs to actually starting your projects on time. Suzanne, is nuts. Only 20% of organizations start their projects on time, right? Wow. And it's because they're not bought in. They're not bought in, right? So I help them try to get buy-in, get things started on time, make a difference, measure that success, evaluate that success, and then start moving forward. And so what's great is with the way I work is I can step in with any one of those 8 steps. I don't have to do all 8. I could just take 1 or 2. And what's helpful from our perspective, our firm, is if there are people out there who may need help, who might need assistance with it, it's easy to have a phone call, have a Zoom call. And then from that perspective, we can see if me or somebody else I can refer. As I mentioned, we have a lot of partners, a lot of people we work with. I can't solve all the world's problems, that's for sure. And so I recognize those partners and help provide those referrals so we can help them out. At the end of the day, what I've learned is, and it's been very grateful, somebody said this early on in this COVID crisis. They said, with your clients, just keep adding value. And what's really been so grateful for is I keep getting asked back to be with my clients after the original scope of engagement. And so what that's telling me is I'm adding value. And so that's what's fun. The reason why I opened up this new firm is because I just love making a difference. I'm passionate about making a difference, and why I don't like it when we waste a day. And so when we can get out there and make a difference, that's my passion. And so if there are people out there in the audience that know somebody or would love a referral, they can connect with me at 40strategy.com, and my email is carljcox at 40strategy.com. Be happy to have a connection and follow up that. And plus, you could also connect with Acumen. We're partners. Actually, just recently they helped us out with a client we had up in the Seattle area with an opportunity, and they were wonderful providing guidance. Frankly, we didn't know exactly what we wanted, and they helped guide us. Great example of why you provide the right referrals and get the right partners for when you don't have the expertise.
That's right. And I love the fact that you're people-centric. It's all about the client and giving value, and that's really where we come from too. Because if you don't provide value, what's the point, right?
That's right. That's right. And there's one other thing of note. I will do this shameless plug. So we actually do something that's quite unique. We actually give the first 10% of our client revenues to charity.
Wonderful.
So that was something that I was really excited to do when I opened up this new company. Very passionate about this. So I selected 4 separate charitable organizations, and we're giving to these 4 different ones. One of the ones I'm specifically focused on, very much related to the challenge we're having with race, and the challenges around that is how do you really help long-term change? And there's an organization that's based out of LA called Homeboy Industries. And so what we do for them, I actually have a $40,000 fundraising goal for them. And so we're in the initial stages of that, trying to hit 40,000 by the end of the year, ideally. And so we're helping to provide that, and makes a great difference. Really what it does is it helps incarcerated gang members to ultimately find a way to get back jobs again and get acclimated back into a culture and making a difference in society. And it's a wonderful thing. There's on my website, there's a YouTube link you can look up of some of my interview that I had with them, but it means a lot to me. And if you can provide a few dollars to them, that'd be worth this time for sure.
That's so important. I always say givers gain. So good for you, Carl.
Thank you.
Suzanne, any parting thoughts?
No, I just appreciate Carl and you, Karen. Thank you for these insights. Like Karen said, we have no doubt that you will be successful. You've got great goals, great strategy, and I love that you're helping others while you're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So audience, Carl Cox, 40 Strategy, we will be posting his contact information. Give him a call. If you've got a question, just give him a call. I'm sure he'll be able to help you. And with that, have a wonderful day. Goodbye from Acumen Executive Search and Carl Cox of 40 Strategy. Bye.